thank you all for coming together. I really appreciate it. I think this event, is kind of always an annual watershed event for all of us to get together in the Chainlink community and learn from each other and really see how we can get Chainlink to go to the next level. I'm really excited by the great mix of people I see here and at our events, which are the DeFi folks, the crypto degens at extreme degen capacity with like the extreme degen capacity. And then also the TradFi folks, which is an interesting mix of people. But I think we're still trying to make it happen. But it's slowly happening. Slowly, everybody's realizing that working together is a good thing, which is great. I think it's also a really exciting time for our industry. That's at a kind of unique moment where it's going to go, in my opinion, now mainstream. And for the longest time, I've heard about everyone's desire from the earliest days of Bitcoin, when it was about microtransactions rather than store of value, about the mainstream adoption of our industry. And so I think that's a shared goal that our community and every other community has, is how do we make our industry go mainstream? And my view on that has always been that it has to be extremely collaborative, providing value to all parts of the world and all different ecosystems. So my view on that has always been that you don't need to eliminate a whole bunch of parts of the world. You need to bring them into the fold. You need to make them run on the technology that represents our industry, and you need to force them to run in the ways that our industry defines as correct, which makes certain issues impossible and makes the world work better. So I think we all know and we all agree and we all understand that the Bitcoin white paper came out of the 2008 financial crisis. There were a number of large issues before the 2008 crisis. There's been a number of issues since then. I think it's always good for all of us to remember kind of what we're doing. Yes, we're building DeFi. Yes, we're enabling the degens to make unbelievable amounts of money in DeFi. And I'm very happy about that, and that's a great thing, in addition to all the other great crypto stuff. But the reality is that I think our industry was really started to solve a fundamental societal problem about how systems that hold value and that allow people to transact work. And that the failure modes of those systems, whether that's Lehman Brothers or Silicon Valley Bank or any other number of examples, even some examples from our own industry, that those failures really shouldn't be possible. That the system, the financial system, should work in a way where it isn't a broken set of promises, and it isn't a broken set of assumptions, and it isn't a bunch of people quietly deciding to screw over society to their benefit and to the detriment of the rest of society, right? So that's, I think, one of the core ideas of Bitcoin, which started our industry. It's been one of my core ideas as I've been in this industry for a while. And I think now, as I think about mainstream, what mainstream means to me is solving that problem in a way that brings the existing financial system on board with our industry. So making the existing financial system and the DeFi degen community very compatible, and to have their economic interests align and to have them help each other become successful. And that is the thing that's going to both take our industry mainstream and enable this technology to get adopted in a way that actually powers the world rather than just powering a subset of the world, right? So what do I mean about this technology and why is it better? I mean, the first idea that we've always been talking about is cryptographic guarantees, and the idea that legal and paper promises are very limited, in the sense that an institution or a person can give you a promise, but they don't really have to keep it. There's no system really making sure they keep it. Whereas cryptographically and mathematically guaranteed events, like smart contracts and blockchain transactions and Oracle networks, are guaranteed. And so this cryptographic guarantee is something I deeply believe in, I feel a lot of us here deeply believe in, and that it's something that's a new way to guarantee relationships between people, where there's a mathematical guarantee about our relationship. It's not a guarantee of my choice or your choice, or anyone else's choice, or whether we like each other or don't like each other, whether we agree with each other's politics or don't agree with each other's politics. But it's just codified what our relationship is, it's mathematically guaranteed, and that's how it's going to work, irrespective of anyone's desires or choices or views, which I think is the better way for the world to work. The second key foundational idea, I think, has been smart contracts, and smart contracts as a single source of truth, right? So when you folks go on Etherscan, or when you look into blockchain transactions at an institutional level, you're looking into a cryptographically guaranteed single source of truth, right? This is the definitive record of what happened. This is definitively what happened with ownership, or in the case of Chainlink and Oracles, it's the definitive thing that happened with data or identity or cross-chain or a number of other things that we'll talk about. But the single source of truth and the golden source of truth idea, I think, is extremely valuable. It's something that the internet and technology companies tried to achieve in the 80s and 90s, and they were unsuccessful. And now I think our industry is actually the one that's going to achieve it by taking all the different records and systems and transactions and decisions out of everyone's hands and putting them into a smart contract. And getting a smart contract to hold the truth, to operate against the truth, and essentially make the decisions that were codified between us, irrespective of our views or feelings, and to make sure that those decisions meet all the conditions that I need them to meet, that you need them to meet, and that in the case of institutions, a regulator or a society needs them to meet. Now, I've been building smart contracts pretty much since the beginning of the beginning, and what I've seen is the evolution of smart contracts as a technology. Smart contracts were always attractive to me because they made misbehavior impossible. They made it impossible that people could do the wrong thing if they wanted to. And they could only do the right thing because the smart contract kind of forced that outcome. But really, the definition of what a smart contract is has expanded over the years. Circa 2014, 15, 16, I've really seen smart contracts be about, hey, there's a single chain. That single chain is doing token issuance and having a ledger. Maybe it's doing some voting with the tokens, and maybe there's some exchange. There's no DeFi, there's no data, there's no cross-chain, there's no identity, there's no institutions. There's just a chain, a token, your keys, another guy's keys, and maybe an exchange. That's it. That's what a smart contract is. When DeFi kind of enters the mix, you arrive in a world where you start to need oracles. And from my point of view, this is when the definition of a smart contract shifted from just being about a single chain to being about the oracles and the contracts across chains, right? So the oracle is a mission-critical key system that's driven by consensus. Chain A is a mission-critical key system driven by consensus. Chain B, mission-critical key system driven by consensus. The other oracles, same thing, mission-critical key system driven by consensus, right? So that is what I started to define as a smart contract in my own mind and in the mind of some of the people that I work with on Chainlink. And so that's kind of what Chainlink did. Chainlink provided the initial oracles for data, for various types of data, and then for bridging. And Chainlink had a lot of success doing that, powering the majority of oracles and oracle usage globally, and the vast majority on very popular chains like Ethereum. And the reason for that is Chainlink's reliability, Chainlink's guarantees, the quality of the data, the quality of the reliability and the uptime. One good example that I'm very proud of is the recent AWS outage saw the vast majority of systems in our industry go down, even though they say they're decentralized and highly reliable, including bridges, data oracles, a whole bunch of stuff that isn't supposed to go down if AWS goes down. Guess what didn't go down? Chainlink. So Chainlink stayed up completely. And this is just a recurring pattern. So there's a recurring pattern where there's market events. There's a recurring pattern where there's reliability events that affect both really high cost, high quality, top tier, tier one centralized systems, and affect what we think are the tier one decentralized systems, but don't affect Chainlink, right? So for me, it's actually really impressive to build a system that's this reliable with an increasing breadth of what it does. And that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about today, is what is the increasing breadth of what Chainlink does. But it's always going to be important that as Chainlink does more things, it continues to be reliable, because people don't put their money or connect their contracts or put value at risk in unreliable systems, which in my opinion is, whoever else is trying to do what Chainlink is doing is probably less, or in many cases, obviously less reliable than Chainlink. So far, Chainlink has, through this reliability and set of services and capabilities, enabled over $26 trillion in transaction value. A lot of that is across DeFi at this point. But if we're able to get institutional adoption to where I think we can get it to, then I can easily see another zero next to this number at a minimum. So I can definitely see a lot of adoption still left to be had and a lot of growth still to be had, both in the DeFi sector, but the institutional sector is a whole other story. The key thing that's happened so far with Chainlink is that it's provided different standards. It's provided data standards, cross-chain standards, compliance standards, privacy standards, which we'll share about today and tomorrow. And those standards have created lots of key services. And those key services have made really reliable smart contracts, really reliable next-generation systems, really reliable DeFi, now really reliable institutional applications. And that's definitely something that we're very proud of. But what we found actually is that there's two problems. In addition to having the breadth of services, right? So you do definitely need more and more types of oracles, more and more data oracles, bridging oracles, identity oracles, compliance oracles, now oracles for AI interactions. And there'll be more and more as contracts become more complex. And so you face the problem of creating more oracles in general of different types. And then the second problem that you face is really the problem of orchestration. So today I'm really proud that we announced that CRE is basically live and in production and available to write workflows for anyone. That's a really big milestone, I think, for Chainlink and the Chainlink community, because it introduces this capability of orchestration. Now, orchestration is basically the ability to coordinate multiple systems and services into one application. And the important thing to understand here is that as the definition of a smart contract expands to include multiple chains and multiple contracts on each chain, and as it expands to include multiple different oracle networks that provide data, compliance, identity, all these different things, the really big second problem, frankly, beyond making more oracles, is how do you organize all of this into a single application? That's pretty much the problem that we found. And I think what we're really trying to achieve with CRE is to become the unifying force and technology for simplifying that. So what I've seen in our industry before is that something like the EVM came in and it made it very cheap and efficient and simple to write smart contracts, whereas before it was a very complex process. But now the definition of a smart contract, from my point of view, has massively expanded, right? Now it includes hundreds of chains, tens of oracles, different data sources, identity sources, something that needs to give something to a regulator. That's what a smart contract is now, especially an institutional smart contract. And so what is the system that's going to simplify the creation of those things? That can't be a chain, because a chain doesn't do that. A chain doesn't coordinate oracles or make oracles. A chain doesn't coordinate other chains. There has to be a place that you run code to organize all the complexity of the different chains, the different oracles, the different data sources, the different identity systems, all the different requirements to comply into a single piece of code, right? And this is basically what we're enabling now with CRE, and our hope and our goal is that CRE will generate the next stage of our industry, just like the EVM generated this huge leap in innovation and growth when it simplified the creation of smart contracts. So please use it, give it a try, tell us what you think about it. We're excited to hear your feedback. It's live, it's in production, it's available to write workflows. Workflows are gradually being released into production and deployment for different developers. They're getting onboarded to start deployment at different rates, depending on their workflows, depending on what they want to do. But at the end of the day, I can definitely see CRE really powering the next generation of our industry if it's done the right way. And a lot of that depends also on your feedback and the Chainlink community coming together to build it, the right way. The basics of CRE and how it works is really the idea of workflows. Workflows is a common term in the enterprise and institutional world, where you basically build a workflow to manage a process and make an application work across systems. So in CRE, we have workflows, and those workflows use fundamental primitives like a chain reader, a chain writer, consensus, the ability to call APIs, the ability to manage secrets, the ability to do a number of things. And what it allows you to do is that instead of taking months or weeks to build an implementation that requires data, identity, cross-chain, you can now build it in hours, just like you can build smart contracts in hours or web applications in hours. So let me show you an example. This example is about the verification of reserves. Chainlink is already the largest provider of proof of reserves to the most stable coins, gold coins, commodity coins, all these different types of coins that need their reserves proven. But now someone can code up a proof of reserves proof on their own and basically launch their own proof of reserves oracle within CRE, and they can attach it to a stable coin, and they can do something called securement, which actually doesn't allow any more stable coins to be generated unless there's a reserves proof. So the proof of reserves part of the CRE workflow checks the custodian API. It returns the result on chain. The securement contract uses that to verify and approve or deny the minting of additional stable coins, right? So in the first part of this workflow, you have an issuer who wants to implement securement and proof of reserves. They don't want to accidentally mint hundreds of trillions of dollars in coins. They want to make sure that that doesn't happen because it's not so good for the coin or for our industry. And so they're going to avoid that by implementing this piece of code with one engineer in a couple hours. In the next part of the workflow, they can actually implement the automated compliance system of Chainlink, the ability to choose the policies that the coin has to follow. This ability to choose what the coin can and can't do according to the policies of the issuer is actually very impressive and valuable. It creates the first real compliance layer in our chain, which is one of the big hurdles to institutional adoption, right? So from my point of view, our goal is to do kind of three things. It's to grow DeFi into an even bigger and more successful industry by providing reliable infrastructure and better infrastructure for DeFi to innovate and build amazing things. It's to bring the institutions on chain, and that's where automated compliance and a lot of these things come in, because without these things, they just won't go on chain. They need to meet these requirements. And then it's to make it so easy and simple for DeFi to grow and for TradFi to grow and for both of them to work together with each other, that becomes a no-brainer, right? That it becomes a no-brainer to spin up a CRE instance, implement some part of your DeFi protocol in a way that it can ingest institutional money because it can comply through ACE. And then the institution is implementing ACE because it can use DeFi or it can work with other institutions. Now the automated compliance engine has verified the policy conditions, and it's going to do that by looking at all the different information. It's going to do that by looking at identity, the policies, and alerting that back to the system. The ability to manage these policies is really quite valuable and critical. And at the end of the day, what I really see happening with this is that you'll have institutional ACE users and you'll have DeFi ACE users, and they'll finally be able to transact. And you'll finally be able to see large amounts of institutional capital flow into DeFi because that capital can comply with the requirements to use DeFi, which right now it can't without ACE. The next part of the flow is CCIP. So we've minted a coin that we know is properly backed. We've verified it against our compliance policies, and now we're going to move it across chains. And all of this complexity for proving the reserves, complying with policies, and moving a coin across chains is organized and managed through a single piece of code running in the CRE. So to make something like this work, you would need 5 to 10 pieces of code doing different things, probably in different languages, in different places, and you wouldn't be able to show it to anybody because it'd just be some private code that you're running somewhere on some server. And that code is actually critical code that defines how this contract works. Now you have a single place where all this complexity around how to interact with systems, how to interact across chains, how to interact with compliance, how to interact with identity. You have one place where you can put it, and what this is really meant to do is just like the EVM increased the efficiency of making smart contracts, this should increase the efficiency of making these advanced institutional smart contracts, where once again, we believe the net new capital will flow into our industry from. We already see a lot of usage of CRE by institutions. So this is something we announced today between the Central Bank of Brazil and the Central Bank of Hong Kong, where they were using both CCIP and CRE. CRE was used for electronic bills of lading, working with Swift ISO 20022 messages, and CCIP was used to exchange various stable coins and central bank digital currencies, and then other assets as well. So at the end of the day, Chainlink really is the only system that can bring all this together, that can give you the ability to orchestrate all of this complexity across many different systems, give you all the capabilities like cross-chain, and I fully expect this example to start using the other capabilities of Chainlink as well. We also recently launched the Digital Transfer Agent standard. This is a set of contracts for fund tokenization. As you can tell from this diagram, CRE is very involved in how this works. And the thing I'll really direct you to is that you can't really build a reliable transfer agent contract without a system that's going to synchronize all these things back into it. And without reliable transfer agent contracts, you don't really get scalable fund tokenization. And without scalable fund tokenization, it's not clear to me how our industry is going to provide the next generation of high-quality real-world assets, right? So these are problems that we need to solve, and that I think CRE does a great job at, and then CRE actually will generate these templates and these contract standards, like the transfer agency standard, that's going to be very easy to implement. So if you wanted to use a transfer agent or make a transfer agent, or you are a transfer agent, and you suddenly decide, hey, I really got to get this tokenized fund off the ground, instead of that being a 6-month process, that can be a 6-day process. And so now you're on the way to making a tokenized fund in a very small fraction of the time. UBS is now using this on production. This is another thing we announced here at the conference. And this is also very exciting because this is now on production and real, and UBS is using this for their tokenized funds, including the transfer agent standard and the NavLink standard, which is the ability to get data into the transfer agents. But the point is that all of these more advanced things are only really possible when you have systems that can properly execute them. And right now, there really isn't another system like Chainlink that can give you the data, the cross-chain, transfer agency contracts, identity, and much less coordinated into a single workflow. That's just not possible anywhere else right now. We've also done a lot of work with top institutions using CRE and using CCIP and other systems recently as well. So ANZ and Fidelity did a transaction using CCIP and the automated compliance engine. I fully expect something like this to be running on CRE sometime soon. Then Connexus, JP Morgan's private chain, announced with us and using Chainlink for a transaction between their private chain and a public chain. And that is really based on CRE's ability to simplify the interaction between a highly regulated private chain and a public chain, in this case, a tokenized fund, right? So what you're seeing here is that a private chain from JP Morgan, the largest bank, with a ton of users on it, is now able to transact against public chains. And this is a great example of what I mean about how this benefits DeFi, because fundamentally the chain here, they have a lot of institutional grade stuff, but in a big way, they're a part of the DeFi movement, right? So this is what you're going to see more of, I think, from the adoption of CRE and the success of Chainlink standards, is you're going to see institutional transactions, but then you're going to see transactions between institutions and DeFi. And frankly, I think the more value that gets on chain from institutions in whatever form, tokenized funds, stable coins, doesn't matter. It just massively benefits our industry. Because the more capital, the more assets, the more cash that's on chain, the better it is for all of us. That's kind of just a simple fact of life from my point of view. We also use CRE in our work with Swift, which we released at the end of last year in Beijing. We allowed the Swift system to operate as it already operates, and then to lock assets on chains. We were able to build an entire application around this and use Swift messages to actually lock assets. And then we were able to allow the Swift system to do payments in its traditional format. And then for those payments to unlock the assets and to build an application around that. And the application allowed these transactions to happen. And then it returned back the single source of truth from the chain, right? So it proved two things. It proved that you can very efficiently use Chainlink and CRE to build flows around very complex existing systems, and that the on-chain records generated from the CRE workflows can be the authoritative single source of truth. And that's extremely valuable because once everyone in the world decides that blockchains and the data on blockchains from oracles are the single source of truth, that's the point at which I think we've truly won. Because if you control what is the single source of truth and the location where it is, you control how systems and the world works. And so we really need to be, that set of systems and standards. And I think that'll take the financial system and industry in a much better place where certain misbehavior is simply technically impossible. So I think it'll really benefit everybody. This was a really complex workflow, and we already built this with CRE at the end of last year. So we've been working on CRE now for some time. It's now released to all of you folks. It's live. Anyone can go write a workflow and simulate it and build workflows around a number of different templates and services and systems. And we encourage you to do that and are hopeful that you find it useful. If you have feedback for us, please let us know. And then, the deployment process of those workflows is happening gradually now. We're also building a really big ecosystem of high-quality data sources, payments providers, transfer agents, and all kinds of other service providers within the CRE ecosystem. And I think we'll also arrive at a place where any of you can build a service or a system on CRE to sell to another developer or to another consumer of that service. But some of the first folks that are starting to join this ecosystem just in the last couple of months have been some of the world's top data providers. So S&P Global, FTSE Russell, Tradeweb, and Deutsche Börse Group have all in the past few months started to put their data on chain via Chainlink. And I think that's because of all the institutional adoption that you see within the Chainlink ecosystem of CRE and the Chainlink standards in general. And I expect that to continue. And I think we're going to really build an amazing ecosystem around CRE. Once it's polished enough and it works well enough, we're going to really seek to grow the amount of data, the amount of services, payment systems, all the stuff that's easy to consume within CRE as a developer, or easy for you to add to CRE as a developer, either for your own use or for use by others. If you're interested in CRE and where it's going to go next, I encourage you to go to these sessions. We have a number of sessions from the product and business side on the left, there tomorrow, and we have developer sessions today on the right from our team and from Amazon Web Services. So you're welcome to go to these sessions and learn more about CRE and try it out as a developer. We're very eager to hear your feedback and looking forward to working with the community to turn CRE into a highly reliable, extremely useful, unparalleled in efficiency way to build institutional and advanced DeFi contracts, smart contracts. The other feature that I'm really excited about from a CRE point of view is privacy. So I've been kind of obsessed with privacy for a long time and implementing privacy well in our industry. It's something we've been doing a lot of research on for many years and working with the top researchers on, all the way back to the days of Town Crier, where we worked with Ari Jules and Fan Zhang almost 10 years ago now. I'm very happy to say that a lot of that great work with Ari and Fan and others, such as Town Crier and Deco, is now finally getting implemented in a unique and holistic approach within CRE. So the privacy properties of CRE will come from a long researched, kind of very well thought through system that is going to address the main problems of how to do private smart contracts on any chain And the main problems there are disclosure of who the users are of the contracts, disclosure of the operations of the contract, and disclosure of the amounts and the movements of value through the contracts. And all of those problems should be getting solved through the privacy system running on CRE. How that system looks at a high level, and we're releasing information about this today as well. We're releasing the early version of the system later this year and early next year, and then we're releasing more of it throughout next year. The stuff we're releasing this year will be to a very select smaller group of folks, early next year to more folks generally, and then more general features and greater amount of privacy features during next year. But what it basically depends on is something called a Vault-on and Chainlink DKG, which is something that there'll be sessions on that you can learn more about. But what it basically does is it guarantees that your workflows in CRE stay private, your credentials to use the APIs to power those workflows with data or identity stay private, and even the outputs into chains can acquire a certain level of privacy, even if the chain doesn't usually provide you that privacy. And then all of the workflow code and all of the API requests can then be verified by your counterparty or whoever you want to allow to verify them, so that you have certain verification that the workflow and the system did everything correctly. So you don't have to rely on the trust assumptions of CRE or the decentralized Oracle network doing things correctly. You're relying on the trust assumptions of, in this case, an enclave trusted execution environment. But really, the approach we have to privacy within Chainlink and within confidential compute is that you should be able to use different privacy approaches. So just like the rest of Chainlink gives you options to get this data or that data, bridge this way or that way, check identity here or check identity there, you'll be able to choose different approaches to privacy, from trusted execution environments to zero-knowledge proofs to fully homomorphic encryption to a number of combinations of those different approaches. But there'll be more on this relatively soon, this year and then early next year. And there are sessions that you can go to from our research team where they're starting to share this with the Chainlink community, and they're starting to get feedback from their colleagues. We encourage you, if you're interested in privacy, to go see these sessions, learn about the approach, learn about how we're looking to generate Chainlink privacy. I think it's going to be very, very important for our industry. Privacy is really one of the key final big steps in getting our industry to power things on a mainstream global scale. And our goal really is to make sure that all of these services, the data services, the messaging services, the privacy, the identity, all of these different combinations of services and the orchestration of the services into advanced contracts is something that provides the reliability that's required to hold value, is something that's easy to use so that developers can quickly build high-quality advanced smart contracts efficiently and get them out into the market and become successful, and that meets the requirements of regulators and society and the world in general so that they can reach mass adoption at a global scale. Now, generally speaking, Chainlink is supposed to provide people choice. It's supposed to provide them choice about what data to use. It's supposed to provide them choice about what encryption to use, what privacy system to use. And we still believe in that, and we want to make the CRE and the privacy capabilities of the CRE and the data capabilities as kind of flexible as possible. So if you have a specific need that you have for CRE or from Chainlink, please share it with us. We're definitely here to help you, the developers and the people building the next generation of our industry. We're very eager to hear what you need from us and from CRE, and the Chainlink community is here to help you build the next generation of smart contracts that are going to take our industry to the next step. So, there's a lot of sessions on all this stuff. Too many sessions now for me to talk about them individually, but we have sessions on how to use AI, cross-chain, compliance, what we're doing on data for institutions and in general, a lot of sessions on CRE, some sessions on confidential compute. These are the sessions that I encourage you to go check out from a product point of view and to see what was really getting built. So I appreciate your attention and interest in what we've put together here. Thank you for coming to the event. I hope it's a great event where you make a lot of interesting friends and have some good conversations. I encourage you, in the spirit of Chainlink, to be very direct and have a good dialogue and have thoughtful conversations with each other about the future of our industry. And if you're a DeFi person and you meet an institutional person, be nice to them. Be nice to them. And if you're an institutional person, you meet a DeFi person, they make a ton of money. You should think about that. There's a lot of, they make a lot of money, a lot more money than it seems, believe me. So just keep that in mind. So great to chat with all of you. Thank you for the interest in our work, and I hope you enjoy the conference.